Hey everyone, welcome back to the TechPulse podcast. My name is Tyler Miller, President and CEO of TechPulse. Today we have an exciting episode for you. We're going to be focused on optimizing project management for MSPs, and we're thrilled to have an esteemed panel of experts joining us. We'll go around and everybody can introduce himself. We'll start with Christopher.
Hi, Chris Scaminaci, VP of Engineering at TechPulse and TechPulse Professional Services. I am the Halo guy.
Hey everybody, Rob Hurd, Senior Executive Coach for Pax8 Academy with some pretty extensive experience in MSP transformations.
And I'm Louis Bagdonas with Moovila. I'm a Senior Program Manager over there focused on the MSP space. So I'm definitely the new guy to the MSP conversation here, which is why I talk to these guys all the time, but a lot of experience in project management in other industries.
Nice. Thank you all for being here. We've been anticipating this episode. It took us a while to get it scheduled, but we're here now, and I think it's going to be a good one. All right, so let's just jump into it. So today's episode is really going to focus on project management techniques for MSPs. The role of Moovila in enhancing these processes, and the integration with HaloPSA we'll touch on as well. So let's start with the core principles of project management and specifically how it relates in their application to MSPs. Chris, you want to kind of kick us off and kind of share your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I think project management is probably one of the things that MSPs in general have the most trouble with, right? We're usually really good about working tickets, being able to be engineers, but project management is kind of where everything kind of falls apart, right? It's an entirely tangential thing that MSPs do. We all have to do it, right? Or professional services, I think, is what Pax8 Academy calls it, right? And these are things like time and materials projects or, fixed fee projects. And when we're talking about it in the context of like our PSAs or what we're using for tooling, I don't think there's a good option out there as far as PSAs that really do projecting well, right? Autotask, ConnectWise, not great. Even Halo, it's moderate, right? It's just tickets, but with a different skin. So I think this is something that a lot of MSPs struggle with, at least in my experience when I'm doing Halo implementations. Usually project management is one of the things that's toughest for them. So I think that Moovila brings a really good kind of spin to this project management thing, especially the way that their integration bolts onto Halo. Full disclosure, I did help them build that integration, or I gave them some consulting help to kind of get them down the path, and I think everybody's really happy with the way it came out. But project management overall, I think, is probably one of the things that stresses out MSP owners the most, Tyler included, right? So it's going to be a good episode, especially with Rob here.
Thanks.
Rob, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just reiterating on what Chris was saying. Ideally, projects are meant to be profitable. We'll definitely drill into that, but really high top points is, starting with clearly defined scope as the key starting point. But like I said, I'm sure we're going to drill into more details of how to do project management properly in an MSP format.
Perfect. So I'll ask some questions here. We can just kind of go around the room. I think the first question would be, what defines effective project management within an MSP? Rob, I'll let you kind of kick that one off.
Sure. So I'd try to simplify that and basically say effective project management is a repeatable process that delivers expected outcomes and a desired level of profitability, right? So if we can run a project properly and we can make money doing it and we can keep doing it over and over again, that's effective project management.
Awesome. What are the common project management methodologies adopted by successful MSPs? I know you go over this stuff in your coaching. Can you go over it kind of at a high level?
So I guess if I look at it, most MSPs that are new to project management, I would say please try to avoid things like Scrum and Agile because they really don't bolt into our stereotypical kind of infrastructure projects. We really should be looking at better methodologies that are closer aligned to a start to finish project versus a iterative project process.
Yes, I would like to add that one of my screening questions when I'm doing HaloPSA implementations is, do you use Scrum and Agile for your project management strategies? And if yes, you are not going to come work with us. It doesn't apply. It's apples and oranges. It just doesn't fit with our model as MSPs, right? Take this from somebody who also runs a software company. Scrum and Agile are garbage. They just don't work, right? They're about iterative processes. That's exactly what Rob said, right? Let's take this project. It's an open-ended project with really no end, and that's why Scrum and Agile are software development methodologies. I see a lot of MSPs try to shoehorn Scrum and Agile into their MSP projects, and it's just not the way to do it. Absolutely not.
I think there's some important pieces of project management when it relates to MSPs. One of it's like resource allocation, right? Chris, what are some of the best practices that you found for resource allocation and more complex MSP projects?
Yeah, so this is actually a really good question because this is something that a lot of MSPs mess up, especially when they do a PSA build, right? The hardest thing to get right is resource allocation, because how do people be like, oh, I'm going to have my engineers work on the project tasks in between their other tickets. Guess what? That time between other tickets never happens because you're always slammed 24/7, right? So it's like, now I either got to schedule this guy out to have some extra time to do projects, or, it doesn't work. And then when it comes to that point of, let me schedule this guy out to do other projects, or, let's block off some time or have him do overtime or whatever, ultimately the scheduling of that is a nightmare. And I think that's really one of the things that Moovila kind of shines on, right? Is being able to look at that holistic overview of, this is everything we've got going on in the desk. This is everything that's going on with these agents. Let's intelligently schedule them to work on their project tasks, in between their time. And let's do it in a way where I don't have to supervise it, because that's the hardest thing, right? Like, what do I have time to go, like, schedule people to go, and then there's site visits and there's this and there's that. No, let something do it automatically for you, right? I think that's really one of the things that I liked most about Moovila when I first saw it too, is like it's scheduling centric, right? And I don't know, maybe Louis could talk more about this, but that's really where I'm at with it.
Louis, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So we actually had a webinar earlier today on baseline timelines versus scheduling, right? And that was a big change, or a big thing for us to wrap our heads around, coming from, because we've been around project management software for a while, right? In construction and retail and a bunch of other industries, manufacturing. And coming into the MSP space, we're using the word schedule, and everyone's going, okay, so it's on the calendar, it's on the dispatch portal in ConnectWise. And we're like, what is that? What are you talking about? Right? So for us, it was, it took us a while to be like, we've got to use the word timeline versus schedule, and we got our hands around it, and we talked to Chris a lot about it, and Tyler a lot about it, and Rob a lot about it, and you've got to have your baseline timeline on your project and there's a bunch of different variables that go into that. What's your lead time? Do you tell customers, hey, we can't start projects for 4 weeks? Hopefully you have some sort of data behind that to inform that number, whether it's number of hours or not. But you've got that, you've got deadlines, you've got cutovers, you've got the resource capacity constraints. So you need to take all that information in, build your timeline for your schedule, when things can happen, and then when each of those tasks can happen along the way. And what Moovila will do is we make it really easy to build those plans and build those dependencies. We're definitely built more for a waterfall methodology for project management, right? Finish to start dependencies between each. We've got the different dependency types as needed, lead, lag, all that fancy good stuff. But essentially then we put together your schedule. We say, hey, does this look right? Does this structure look right? You hit yes, you update your full timeline, and then you can go to that next piece and say, okay, now I need to put it on. If I want to put it on the calendar, I've got to put it on the calendar. And I've got an accurate timeline when things actually can happen to do that, so that people aren't wasting time going in and saying, okay, I'm supposed to work on this project ticket right now because I've scheduled it out. And then they're like, oh, well, the equipment wasn't delivered. So I've just wasted 20 minutes figuring out I can't work on this.
Yeah, and having gone through the Pax8 program, waterfall was a scary word for me. right? Especially when I started talking to Moovila, months ago, because I'm like, oh, waterfall, isn't this the thing that Rob told me not to do? But then I realized that it was about context, right? Like when a project management platform that's doing waterfall is built in the context of what MSPs do, it makes a lot of sense. But when it's something like Microsoft Project or Asana, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's not built in the context of our industry, right?
Okay, so we've got the project scheduled, we've got resources allocated. How do we know it's going to plan, right? What metrics should we be looking for to make sure it's successful during the project and after? As it relates to MSPs, Rob, maybe you can kind of give some good metrics to watch out for, and Louis, you can speak on how kind of Moovila reports on those.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, I would say on a simple high level side, on time, on budget, and client as well as internal satisfaction. I think internal satisfaction is something that a lot of MSPs don't look at, don't measure, and don't capture. But there's opportunities for enhancements and efficiencies when you're questioning your project engineers on how well and how successful they thought the project went.
And if you want more to that, go to academy.pax8.com.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, Pax8, you could put the check in the mail, make it payable to TechPulse. One word, no space.
Yeah,
Louis,
I was just going to say one thing we see often, and Rob, we talk about this a lot. And when you mention profitability, right, on track, on budget, people will be like, "Well, it's a fixed fee project; it's $10,000." It's like, okay, that's great, but you have to get to that $10,000 amount somehow, right? There's got to be some sort of breakdown between what are the resource type or the specific pieces of work and the hours and bill rates. Like, you got to have the building blocks to get there, and you need to have that so that when you start to see that you're losing margin, you're losing profit on projects, you can drill in to where that's happening, right? Do you think that you can get something done with a level 1 engineer, but really you're having to pull in level 3s and it's costing you more? Or did you under budget your hours and you're having to then spend, 3 times the amount of time to get something done? So one thing that we do is any project ticket in our system that is generated from a Moovila template ticket, we will always track the performance of that project ticket against the template ticket. So you can go into your templates in Moovila and you can pull up, hey, client onboarding, I need to assess my customer's network. I thought it would take me 4 hours. You can open up a box and we can go into it and show you whenever you want, but it'll show you here all of the project tickets that were generated from this template ticket. I thought it would take me 3 hours. On average, it's actually taking me 5. And am I using the right resource? What's my cost actually coming in at compared to where I thought it was? So, big thing, KPIs, tough one to measure, right? Profitability, that's pretty straightforward for sure. But another tough one that goes along with that is kind of what's the right number of tickets and do you have a breakdown of your work in your projects? I would say if you're running projects out of 2 tickets, it's gonna be hard to try to figure out where things go wrong. We see it for sure. So I wouldn't call that necessarily a KPI. It's a hard one to put an objective piece of data around it. But do you have the right number of tickets in your project? Because that will help you then with the really true KPIs, the ones we need to be looking at on time and on budget.
And this is, so I want to add to that because this is actually a really important thing that we should talk about, is that in my experience, when I'm building HaloPSA for other MSPs or we're doing professional services, I noticed that the time and materials thing versus fixed fee, people think that fixed fee projects are always profitable because they see the bottom line revenue, right? Like, I made $10,000 on this project, right? So it's $10,000 revenue. It's not. However much labor you put into there with that fully burdened rate on that engineer is really what your profit determines. Halo did, they made an honest effort about doing this with their budgets grid, right? That's what the budgets grid's about, is like, hey, I've got this much time budgeted for each of these things. And then as the agents do tickets against those things, it's subtracting from that budget time so you can, roughly guesstimate if you're profitable or not. The problem is that methodology requires you to use everything as a micro task. All of those project tickets have to be little micro tasks so that you can't really mix labor types, right? Like you can't have a project task that does 1, 2, and 3 things, but it requires different agents, different rates and stuff. And so your budget table is not going to be accurate. And that's where you bring in something like a Moovila, right? To determine, okay, based on, how do I consolidate my tickets down to, something that makes more logical sense than micro tasks.
Mhm.
And how do I really calculate my profitability based on what agent's working that stuff and for how long? And that, Louis mentioned is a really good metric to extract is like, what's my average time to complete this task? If this is a task that we do a lot, and we're going to be gathering data about how long it takes us to do this task, maybe across an entire array of agents, then we're going to be extracting really good actionable data that says, hey, we usually budget 3 hours for something like this, but it's taking us closer to 5. So in the future, we need to up that to be 5 hours of budget time. And well, if we go back and look at our historical data, it looks like we've never been making money on these projects, right? And I think that the most common trap that most MSPs fall into, especially smaller MSPs, is doing everything fixed fee. Fixed fee projects, from what I've seen, typically are not very profitable compared to something like time and materials where you guarantee you're making some kind of baseline profit. But Rob, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're 100% right, Chris. I would almost call it a maturity, right? So if I was a brand new MSP and limited technical experience, I needed to do a mailbox migration or a SharePoint migration. I may start at time and materials because there's some protection for me because I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know how many resources, and I'm really new at this. So all of a sudden I sell 2 or 3 of these and I got a better understanding of my efficiencies and my skill set. Then I can go and take that data and be able to scope it as a fixed fee project. But don't be afraid to sell a project on a time and materials basis if there's a big downside for you to lose your shirt on it.
Or even a hybrid of the two, right? That's something we do a lot at TechPulse, which I've not seen a lot of other MSPs do. I'm not sure if it's a popular methodology, if we're just doing it wrong, but we'll scope a lot of things as fixed fee projects, and then we'll have cost overruns be time and materials because, if we can complete it in, this is our estimated, target, and we're going to make them pay that either way. But if we exceed that, why should we take the loss, right? And truthfully, we've had really good reception from that. And that was something that Tyler was doing before I was even at TechPulse. So, and props go to him on that one, but it works for us. So,
yeah, we see it a lot in flight projects, right? So, hey, it's a fixed fee project, and then something customer didn't tell us something in the scope, and oh, you have 6 other applications on this server that we're migrating that we had no idea about, right? And then it's okay, that's going to be a time and material portion to the project. We see that a lot. I absolutely agree. I would encourage people to do it on the front end too, right? Like if you have a component that you're selling and it's a mailbox migration, you say, we know we can knock this out. This is our margin. This is the fixed fee portion. And you've sold another component of that you're not as sure on, just do part is fixed fee, part is time and material within the same project. I mean, I think the more upfront and honest and open you are with your customers about things, then the easier it is to go ahead and get that passed through, and people understand, right? Everybody, they want you to be in business as well. They don't want you to lose money and go out of business and not be able to service them anymore.
Right. And we have to worry about the scope creep situation too, right? Because there's never been a project done by an MSP that didn't have scope creep. And you will never convince me otherwise. Sometimes the scope creep is your fault. Sometimes the scope creep is your client's fault. But at the end of the day, if you're not making money, you're doing a disservice to you both, right? So.
Okay, so real quick, one last, I think, core principle to this is project documentation. I know, scary word, a lot of work. Unless you subscribe to the YOLO method, which a lot of MSPs do. We do sometimes still. How does project documentation influence project outcome in an MSP environment? Chris, Rob, you may want to take this one, or during the project and after the project, right?
What is project documentation? Is that a thing?
I don't know. I read it here for the first time. I don't know.
Okay, so
somebody's been reading Pax8 best practices.
I mean, so project documentation, first of all, this is something that most people don't build into their budget table. when they're doing fixed fee quoting, and they should be, because they're like, oh, well, it's my documentation for when my engineers need to go maintain it. So you're going to pass that off someday if they ever switch MSPs or if they go to an internal team. Like, you should be compensated for generating that documentation, because if you're doing a huge project that needs detailed scope documentation, then yeah, you should be charging. That should be included in your budget table. That's part of your project management budget, right?
Yeah, and Chris, to piggyback on that, is that handoff from our project engineers and our project team to our service desk for our ongoing internal support. There's nothing worse than help desk getting a call on Monday morning for a project that got deployed over the weekend, and they have no idea that it even happened, and then have no idea how to support it.
We call that the TechPulse method. No,
Wow.
I've been there though, right? Like it was something that happened when we were less operationally mature than we are now, where we would, do projects over weekends or something, and despite our best efforts to educate the engineers, it wasn't always possible. That's a huge thing too, right? And now when we're doing fixed fee scoping, or we're doing even time and material scoping, we're thinking about consciously about how much time and support it's going to take us when that go live happens. Because not only do you have to train your staff on it and document it well, but like, you need to take into account that this project will always have some kind of consequences to the support team, right? And when you're done implementing that project, it's exactly what Rob said, you're handing it off to the support team. The support team's carrying it from there. There will always be support costs associated with it. Oh, they're on a fixed, they're on an all-you-can-eat plan. We don't really care what the support costs us. You do care what the support costs you. It's a big deal. Like, you're not profitable on all-you-can-eat if you're using all of that support time, right? The MSPs on all-you-can-eat plans are profitable when we do the least amount of support. So,
yeah, we're starting to see more often, and we influence it, and we have it in our pretend templates, we'll call them, whatever you want, demo templates, right? Is you've got a in your closing phase of your project, you've got a documentation task, and that has a dependency. You can't close the project off. And then you have a support handoff. And because that support handoff also costs you money, because it has your project engineer and whoever on your service team is part of that meeting as well too. So maybe you don't initially charge for that, but hey, it's something we want to track against over time and see how much it's costing us. And when it gets to a point when it's a decent amount of change, we need to make sure we're billing for that in our either fixed fee or time material, or however you put it in there.
I think that's a key point, Louis, because I think a lot of MSPs don't capture, like Chris said, that day one support as part of the cost of the project. Their service tickets, they're coming in, they're getting hit by the billing plan combination or the contract or the agreement, and we're absorbing it, where if we didn't have the project, we wouldn't have had those support. They really do need to be associated.
yeah, thanks. I learned that from Rob, by the way.
The other one that we ask pretty often early on, and not as harsh as Chris, where if they answer wrong, we say, well, sorry, you can't use our software. But, is, do you charge for project management time as well? And pretty frequently people are like, no, we don't. It's just fixed fee or whatever it is. And it's like, but you have a project manager, right? And they're like, yeah. I was like, so where does their time go? And they're like, well, just into the ether. It's just out there. It's a sunk cost, whatever. And it's like, you need all the details to get all your profitability, right? So at least it's same thing as the support handoff. Start to track that project management time, so you can see, hey, on average, how long does it take us project management hours? And then you can start to pull a correlation too based on hours. A lot of people will just say, hey, it's a flat, however many engineering hours, it's 18% of project management time. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, right? But get yourself the data so you can at least start to come up with that percentage that you can build in.
Yeah.
I've heard that 18% before, and that's a pretty common number that I've heard thrown around. And I think that's actually a pretty decent number too. I usually figure about 20% when we're doing our fixed fee scoping. I was like, about that. And the most common rationalization I hear from MSP owners about why they don't do that is they're like, well, I got to pay them anyway, so what does it matter? Well, I mean, come on, it matters.
Margin?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think a good example, like an MSP, right? This is something we learned the hard way is, especially MSPs that do structured cabling and things like that. We have a lot of clients that move offices, and we kind of deal with the IT project, right? So we go and we do structured cabling. We're buying everything associated with that. We're designing it. We're designing the conference rooms. Getting the new network in place. Take care of transferring the networking equipment from the old location to the new location, and sitting on general contractor calls once or twice a week, right? So you're in the loop on everything. A lot of MSPs don't charge for that time, and it's a huge time suck. So you gotta, yeah, charge either a project management fee, flat fee, percentage, whatever you feel. So, okay, so let's jump into some more specifics of Moovila. Louis, can you explain how Moovila can assist MSPs in optimizing their project management? Maybe go over some of the top features that MSPs use, and then if you want to jump into maybe a short demo.
Sure. Yeah. So automation, automation. That's what everybody talks about and says, and we say it too, right? And we've got it in the platform. And our automation is a little more human assisted, right? And we're careful about getting to the point of, hey, let's just turn it loose and let it plan the projects and update dates all the time. And sure, we could turn that on, but there's still project management. There still needs to be some sort of review with it. So what our platform will do is once you build your projects and building of projects, and I'll jump in a second and show that we make it really easy to build the projects. We have a automation coach in there that helps you walk through, hey, you don't have a work estimate or budgeted hours set on these tasks. You need to update that. Hey, you don't have dependencies. You need to update that. The whole platform is built on PMI best practices. So it will walk you through building a good project, even if you have never built a project before in your life. We've got some tools in there that will scream at you and yell at you and say, hey, you've got a terrible project, you've got a bad score, you need to fix this problem. So we make it easy to build it. But then our automation will monitor that project 24/7, 365. So as soon as somebody's late on a task, we'll call it out. Even when we get to a certain point in the day and there's a work estimate associated with a task and you don't have enough time left in the day, we'll call that out. Like, hey, this is going to be an issue. You're going to be late on this today. And then here's the impact it has to everything else within the project. So we make it really easy to build and then monitor. So I'll go ahead and share. That's all right.
It's a really cool feature too. I mean, if it's one thing MSPs suck at, it's projects, right? A lot of MSPs are not good at it. So having something to help you along there, give you some tips along the way is valuable.
Yeah. And I'll show you what that looks like. You can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah, good, cool. So this is what we would call the base of a project or a shell, right? It doesn't have anything in it yet. It doesn't have any phases. It doesn't have your work plan, all your tickets. And you can easily build things from scratch in the platform. It will run a lot like a spreadsheet, which is great, but it's a waste of time. So what we typically work on through our deployments are, hey, let's get your templates in there fast and let's get them built out. And then you can adjust over time. Like I said, we're going to do those analytics back. So really building a project should be building from your templates. And I think this goes back to that repeatable process that Rob was mentioning, right? If you've got a certain type of project, you build it from these templates each time. So in Moovila, really easy within that project to then jump in and see a list of all of your either templates or projects. So essentially here, phase to duplicate, we're going to pick what do we want to copy, and then target parent phase is where do we want to put it within the project. So we're going to give you a list of all of your templates, and you can filter in projects and you can copy things from existing projects as well too. So you can really build we call them Frankenstein projects. You can just grab pieces from all over the place and put them together. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab my base. So part of that project management best practices is even if it is a complex project you've never done, you're still going to have a lot of the same opening and closing tasks. You're still going to have a scope review, an internal kickoff, an external kickoff at the beginning. At the end, you want to have that documentation, that support handoff, project review with your customer internally. So those same building blocks. So we allow you to grab your base here, and then you can come through and you can cherry pick whatever you want, right? So you can say, well, let me grab a risk assessment and an Office 365 migration and also a wireless, or just the install phase within wireless. So like I said, Frankenstein all over the place. I'll keep it easy.
This
I'll
is
just
really
grab a risk.
cool. I didn't even know Moovila did this, by the way. This is actually
Yeah.
really cool because in Halo, you can just pick a template, right? Being able to like Frankenstein templates together. This is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. It's most of the PSAs are that way for some reason. Like you can just grab kind of one at a time. So I'll
It's
go
almost
ahead
like
and
they're built by people without context in how MSPs operate, right?
they're made for service tickets, not projects, right? So um, anyway, grab what you need. I'm not going to nest it, so it's pretty. But apply, and then we're going to say, hey, where within the project do you want to put it? So if you have a phase structure already, you can nest things however you need. The phases in Moovila will become milestones over in Halo, so it'll look like you're used to over there. But then we'll copy everything over. So on those templates, we go ahead and we set our work roles required for each task, right? Level 1, 2, 3 engineer. We'll set the durations, so how long you have to get that work done. We'll set the work estimates, the budgeted hours. We've got, you can build your checklist items or your steps. You can build your work estimates with all those steps. So essentially, there's some systems where building a project and building a template are really different, and we try to keep it as similar as possible. So you would create your templates in our platform from your projects. So we transfer all that data over, so you're not having to recreate everything. But the biggest thing in Moovila is that we make those dependencies easy. So we're talking about finish to start and what tasks are dependent on another. And in here, we've got this critical path view. So those network diagrams that traditionally we've taken sticky notes and we draw it on a sticky note and then we put it on a whiteboard and then we draw the arrows between everything and move it around and then hope that nobody takes it down before the project's over. So we virtualize all this for you. And what we can see here is, hey, I'm going to start with scope review. We can come in and we can pull these different pieces together really quickly. So from planning, I'm then going to go into those different execution pieces I've pulled together, and I'm going to tie these all in so I can have multiple work streams happening at one time. And what Moovila will do is whatever is going to be on the critical path, the shortest length from start to finish on that project, we're going to put at the top, right? Those alternate work streams are going to run at the bottom. But as potentially some of these tasks at the bottom become the critical path, we'll flip all this for you. Like I said, we're monitoring 24/7. But I can come in here and say, once I finish that security call, then execution is going to be complete. I also want to tie in customer recommendations to execution complete. And just piecing all that together from our templates in seconds, we have a forecasted close date on this project from 10/4. Now, right, would be start dates today or date of conversion, whatever y'all look at it for. But you can come in and say, well, if I start my scope review, I've got a 4-week lead. So I'm going to start this on September the 10th. We've got a bunch of different tools. I could lock that date in there on that first task. And then what we'll do is we'll forecast every single piece of work throughout that entire project here. So grabbing those templates, piecing them together, we'll automate the forecasting of all those dates all the way through and show you, hey, if we start this project on September the 10th, we would be forecasted to finish on November the 4th. You can hit update, hit yes, and we'll push all those start and due dates to all of those tasks. So each of these tiles are a task. And then all that information flows back over to your PSA. So if you have your engineers working out of your PSA, they know they've got that full work plan and they have a full project schedule with it as well too.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight here, this is really where the genius of this platform comes in, is that when they approached me to start building their HaloPSA integration, I was like, I think what MSPs want is their engineers to not leave HaloPSA, but their project managers need to leave HaloPSA because the project management tooling in Halo is not good. So, and this is exactly, I kind of took my advice to heart here, and this is more of like the project manager is driving this thing in Halo or in Moovila, right? But the engineers get to keep working in Halo and just work their project tickets. Moovila bolts onto Halo and takes over the project management inside of Halo and exchanges data that way. And it's really designed in a way that it's going to be a seamless experience for engineers to pick it up and be able to use it. And that's not only, I mean, the platform itself stands on its technical merits. It's very well built, but like that component of it, not having to, bring everybody into Microsoft Project or Asana and everybody has to task switch and change windows.
No.
Chris, another really big thing is the fact that the project is fully scheduled. One of the biggest downfalls I see with partners is either phase scheduling or, all right, I'll do 20% of the tickets. And we don't get that true forecasted end date. And then
we all know that Pax8 Academy loves to schedule shit. It's absolutely your guys' jam. Yeah. But I agree 100%, right? Because like, how do you fit? How are you gonna fit little blocks of project time in here or there? It's impossible for somebody to map out all of these different project items and then assign them to an agent, get them scheduled in time. No, let an automated system do that, and that's what this is doing, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah. So on your scheduling shit comment there, Chris, right? This is what I talked about earlier. So like this would be the baseline timeline, and people are like, all right, so this is on the calendar. We're like, no, like this is your timeline for your project. So what we've got coming out, I'm like in the next couple days, I think next week or so, is we've got this, we're calling it Smart Schedule. It's our version of a dispatch portal, but essentially if you know who can take on the task, that's great. If you have a big pool of resources and you don't, you can set the resource type required. You can set skills here and we can do some matching for you. But essentially you can open up here and you can see, okay, I need to schedule Steve. He's going to be my project manager on this. He's going to work on this 10/15, 10/16. I'm looking in the future. We'll pull in Outlook calendars and we'll show you, okay, if you want to schedule him, here's auto find the 1 hour that fits within that window. Okay, let me put this on the calendar and schedule it. 2 clicks, save it. Now that's on Steve's calendar there.
That's amazing. By the way, this is the first time I'm seeing this, and that's awesome. That's incredible. So for anybody watching, there are 2 vendors in the entire world, software-wise, that give me the warm fuzzies. One of them is Ignite, and one of them is Moovila. And since the first time I saw this platform, I was like, these guys get it. These are the only guys that actually get how projects work in our industry and are actually making an attempt to build a bridge to us. And that's where I really took to the Moovila team, a lot, is because of stuff like this. Like, can you imagine Microsoft Project or Asana or somebody trying to implement something like ConnectWise, Autotask? Like, come on, it would never be anything like this. Like, they're actually doing the research. They actually are interested in seeing how MSPs run their businesses and adapting their tooling to that. And so you guys are never allowed to get bought by private equity. You're never allowed to go public. But these guys get it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chris, and we try to listen, right? I mean, that's why we talk to you guys. That's why we talk to Rob. I mean, like, this here is as much of a child of ours as it is of yours and Rob's, right? Because you've helped us understand, right? When we're like, no, schedule, and they're like, no. It's got to be on the calendar, right? So, and we've tried to listen, but we've also then tried to see how we can make everybody's lives easier. When we started to look at this, we're like, okay, calendars, a function that people have literally been looking at for hundreds of years. How can we think about this differently, right? And for us, I think the big thing is going to go back to this timeline, because if you come in here and you say, well, I got to kick the start of this out to the 24th, right? As soon as you change that date, we then prompt you and say, okay, everything's, you need to update the dates on all your tasks. So if you jump back into that schedule install here, you can see that it's going to take a minute, but we can then toggle in the new forecasted dates. So we can then say, hey, well, I guess it doesn't want to do it, and this is why we're releasing it next week. But what you can do is you can toggle in and you can say, hey, you've got invalid dates, right, on your task. So if you see that you've got invalid dates, you need to reschedule your plan, because if you put it on someone's calendar, they're going to get to it and they're going to say, I can't work on this, right? Like the predecessors haven't been complete. Everything else was late. So trying to do that. We're going to layer in all the open tasks as well too. It looks like Steve doesn't have anything at that point in time, but you can start to see, here's everything that is scheduled on the calendar, but then on top of that, here are all of those open tasks that he has as well too, the open tickets, project tickets.
Anybody who's ever tried to do this in their PSA can attest that this is the worst thing, right? Like you miss one target, your next task target's off schedule by a day or two. You got to shift everything back. Good luck. You're clicking through 60, project task tickets to roll everything back. Actually, Halo just got the ability recently to be able to roll things out, and it still doesn't work exactly as like a full project management platform does. So that's huge, especially if you're an MSP that does huge projects, which, I've got several partners that they're just basically project MSPs, right? This is what they do all day, every day. They don't do a lot of managed, all you can eat, desktop support. A lot of what they do is projects. Yeah. And this is time, right? This is time you're saving.
Yeah. So we try to listen. The other one that we listened to and we heard about at IT Nation last year a lot was the analytics against templates. So just real quick, and then anything else you guys want me to pick apart in here, absolutely. But we heard that a lot in November. So we rolled this out in February or March of this year. But essentially coming into your templates and saying, hey, how am I doing compared to this, what I mentioned earlier? So, hey, I thought that assessing the network would take me 2 hours. On average, it's actually, I'm updating those work estimates on those project plans to 2.33. And on average, based on time entries, it's actually taking me 4.3 hours. And like I said, you can drill into these and we can look at, here's all of those tasks that have been created from this template ticket. And then here's all the time entries associated with them. Hopefully Brad put some notes why this took him 8 hours instead of 2, right? But you can drill in and you can get all this information here. You can open the tickets, you can go into the projects. So giving you, right, instead of having to go and hunt and peck and go through all those projects. Oh, did we use this here? Did we use that here? So even however you use those Frankenstein and grab those phases and pull them together, as long as they're created from a template task in Moovila, we're going to track the performance back here for the life of the project.
That's amazing, because I think one of the first questions we asked was, what are the KPIs or what are the metrics we're trying to extract from our project management? There they are. They're being surfaced for you, right? Like, we know assessing the network, we usually estimate 2 hours, but it's taking us 4.33 hours. We know what the
Did we lose Chris?
Yeah.
We might have.
Louis, you want to just keep going with a few other demo items?
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing in here as well too is, as we talked about, do you have the right resource type, right? We'll calculate your cost against your budget and what it's actually costing you, right? So you can drill into the profitability piece on a task by task basis. Are we going over on hours? Do we need to update the resource type? And then part of the automation here is we'll make recommended updates. Hey, you need to update your template. These are your new values. So then you have your new baseline there that you're going to track against. And then, as I mentioned before, in our templates with all the work estimates and durations and everything, you can build those network diagrams in here as well too. So you've got this full critical path in here. So really you work through this with your team. I'm sure you've got templates somewhere in a spreadsheet or a PSA or something. We'll get them in here once. We'll build the dependencies, run a couple projects, see how they go, make adjustments as we need. And then really you've got the building blocks for your projects. So trying to listen, piecing those different phases together, that's something that we heard often, and we changed that process in our platform as well too. And then I mentioned it as well. We've got that score here. We call it our RPAC score. That's essentially the health score of the project. So, I've got a good score on my template, which means when I create a project from this template, I'll have a good score there as well too. And then when I start to look at projects at a portfolio level, and we've got a bunch of different views here. This is the timeline view. So I got some data on the left, timeline on the right. You then have this RPAC score to know when you jump in the morning, as Chris said, partners that all they do is run projects. I mean, we've got partners that they've got 600 active projects at once. I don't want to hunt and peck and go through all those and say, okay, is this one on
600.
track? Is this one on track? Is this one on track? Is that one on track? Is it right? And this gives you the tool to say, okay, this network upgrade project, I've got a score of 197. I'm still forecasted a little early, but something's going on with this. I need to drill into that. And then what we'll do is, right, I've got over 50 tickets in this project. I don't want to go through each one and see what's going on. We'll highlight it for you. Hey, equipment wasn't delivered on time. It was due on 8/6. Today's 8/9. We've got to reforecast everything on this project here.
I love it. It's projects for dummies.
We try, right? I mean, and here's all those issues that we'll call out at the same time. And here's that AI coach as well that you can jump in here. Number one issue, right? What's the issue? What's the risk? What's the fix? Do you want to learn some more? Link out to our guide site with a short video explaining why it's important. What's next? And you can make all your changes from in here, right? So that's the other thing about the platform is we try to make it so it drives me nuts in other places. I need to add charge rate or whatever it is. And you've got to leave what you're doing and go into that other screen, right? From here within this coach, you can open up, you can make changes. Yeah, I just need to update the status on this task. And that will make those changes. It'll show you how it impacts your score. So you can work through all these problems, whether it's a live in-flight project or if it's something that you're building from the ground up. And I'll show you all, because I know it'll work in here, that back to that schedule piece here. So now you can see that, hey, I need to schedule Kyle for an hour on this 8/7 to 8/11, but I've got to update the timeline of my project. And if I toggle those updated dates on, when's the next 1 hour block that falls within that window? So, we'll automate that as well too. But again, unless you automate the timeline and you build that network diagram and path there, then it's going to be tough to automate the scheduling piece.
Yeah, that's huge. I especially like all the pretty graphics. That's my favorite part. Everybody who builds SaaS software knows that if you don't have pretty stuff, that nobody's going to buy your stuff. And you guys definitely hit the everything is pretty mark for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, with it being pretty, it just makes it a little easier to click through and figure it out, right?
It's intuitive, right? Like, I've never seen a PSA show you a timeline graph of everything left to right and, with the dates and all the dependencies and the interlinkings and everything. That's huge. It's huge. There's a lot of people are visual, right? Like, you can look at a list of tickets, but it doesn't put them in a visual order for you. You can look at a Kanban, but it's not going to give you the visual idea of what the progression of steps is, right? This is actually like spelling it, just drawing it all out in crayon for you, right? It's great.
Yeah, and what it does is it makes it does a lot for you. So I should say that, but it makes those hard conversations a little bit easier. Not that they are easier, but if you need to call the customer and say, "Hey, you didn't get me credentials for the server, so here's the impact it has to everything else," you've got a clear, pretty red circle here that then forecasts everything down, and you can show them here's the impact it has to the end of the project, right? So that visual and being able to actually show people things, right? It makes those conversations a lot easier.
Red bad, green good.
Yeah, right. Right.
Simplifies
it.
it.
The CEO.
Write that down. Louis, can you give us a little insight in when someone signs up for Moovila, what the onboarding or training looks like?
Yeah. So, we do drink our own Kool-Aid. So we have our own instance. We run all our onboardings out of there, right? And it depends. We've got some different modules and things that you can get because there's definitely a lot to the platform, right? And there's some pieces that if some people are really just starting to build out their project management structure, they might not necessarily need right away. So we make it easy to add that stuff on over time. But I'd say on average, it's a 8 to 10 week engagement. So I split my time between onboarding and then with the product side of the house, making sure that we're listening to you guys and updating the product as needed. So me, and then we've got a team of onboarding managers, and we've got some folks with PMP from different industries, and we've got folks from the MSP industry as well too. So we really got a hybrid, and what we'll do is we'll review kind of the customer, their needs, and make sure we try to get the best fit. And then it's about an 8 to 10 to 12 week engagement, and we meet once a week, and really we straddle the line between, I'd say, implementation and onboarding, where it's not just you click this button to go here, and then you click this button to go here. We really do like to learn about our customer's process, right? How are you billing? Are you doing time and material? Are you doing fixed fee? Do you need to forecast revenue? Do you need to forecast cash flow? Do you need to forecast accruals? So we like to have those conversations, shared resources, which drive capacity. So really, we like to learn the process, and we like to get you in the platform quick, get the integration set up quick, because that's really where people see the value. If it's to Halo or to ConnectWise, we want to get that going fast, so you can see that data going back and forth. And then we do a little bit of admin setup, and then it's off to the races on building dependencies and working on your templates, and encourage people to get your templates in and let's work through them together. Why do you have this dependency that way? Would you tie it this way? Would you think about it a little bit differently? So it's really, really engaged. We like to learn the process. We like to make sure that we're setting it up and you're successful. There's no reason just to show you how to do it and then leave you to your own vices. And then if you're not happy with us, right? So we are pretty hands-on.
Can you elaborate a little bit about what the synchronization tune from Halo is, what it looks like, and because this is the question that everybody is going to ask, right? Is like,
sure.
Well, what is it syncing back and forth to Halo? Obviously, we know it's syncing the tickets back and forth. What's it doing with time entries and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I can actually, this is the sales demo. So this one's the really pretty one, but let me jump into my training demo. So we sync the project details and the ticket details. We've got actions rolling out here in the next couple of weeks. So currently it's just live for projects, tickets, assigned agents, start dates, due dates, work estimate, hours, all that sort of stuff. And then we've got actions coming out in the next couple of weeks. And then behind that, we'll have appointments. And then we will have, we're working on incorporating charge rates into our system as well too. So if I pull this up, this project, right here's the project. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me add that charge rates. So charge rates in Halo, right? Big deal. And Halo typically has to be in the configuration of using budgets or using charge rates. There's ways you can configure it to use both, but it's lacking capability in that. There might be reasons you want to use different things, right? You might want to use budgets for something like a fixed fee project, but you want to use charge rates for a time and materials project. So that's a huge deal, being able to switch between the two, because that's where not only Halo, but a lot of other PSAs struggle too, right? They're either designed to do fixed fee projects or they're designed to, do time and materials projects, but most are not designed to do both side by side. And most MSPs do both side by side.
And they're not designed to combine them as well. So, and that's one I talked to Rob. He's probably really tired of talking to me about how you bill on projects. I don't know why, it's like my favorite topic of all time. I'm like, why are people doing it this way? So we've actually got a feeature set we're working on that we need to call it crafted by Rob or curated, maybe. That's like the trendy Gen Z word. To give you that flexibility in here, and a big part of it is forecasting progress billing on fixed fee projects. So we can talk about that more, but just real quick, right? So in Moovila, I've got the project, I've got my phase structure here, I've got my tickets, and then if I jump into Halo, which I'll need to share this tab instead. That's intuitive. So it's got that same structure in here. You can, reorder the way you need to in Halo. We've got the discovery, and then we've got all those corresponding tickets there. Are going to be tasks in Moovila. We've got the agent. We've got start dates, target dates. We've got the priority mapped. We've got the statuses, of course, mapped, and we've got those time budgets there are going to map to the work estimates in Moovila. So really, you take those work plans that we applied to that shell of that project to build out your phases, your tasks, your budgets, you start assigning your agents, and then all of that here is going to appear over in Halo.
And this is probably one of the juiciest tidbits that large MSPs who do a lot of project work are going to want to see, right? Because what this means in a large picture scenario is that instead of training your entire MSP, all 75 agents, how to use Moovila, what you're doing is you're training those 5 project people how to use Moovila, and the agents use the system that they're familiar with. That's one of the most valuable things about the methodology with which Moovila bolts onto Halo, right?
Yeah.
Agents can immediately start working project tickets like nothing has changed. But really your visibility and the project management piece, with the piece that actually matters, that's actually terrible to do in your PSA, is not being done in your PSA. But nothing looks different for all the employees.
Yeah. And as you hit that update button on the critical path to reforecast all those start and due dates, that updates all these tasks, right? So it's not okay, let me go in, I need to update all these dates and one by one and do it. You can still use that 2-click update, and then that informs everything over here in Halo, so those agents can see exactly when they can start work and when it's due by. And all the changes they make in Halo, update the status, move on to the next one, all that information flows over. So when things are late and they're highlighted in red, you can see it in Moovila.
Awesome. Okay, we touched on this a little bit, but automation, just in general, right? When it comes to effective project management in the MSP world, Chris, you're the automation wizard, so I'll let you start this. But what tools and techniques, specifically in project management, have you seen or found to be most beneficial?
Honest to God, I swear, of the 150 MSPs that I've talked to, I've never seen one effectively implement automation for project management, myself included. And that pains my ego deeply to admit, but it's really hard, right? Like there's components you can automate in your projects. There's maybe deployments you can automate in your projects, but the project management piece of it, I've never really been able to surmount that myself because it's entirely a human attention related thing. Maybe with generative AI, we're going to see that change, in the future and stuff, because it's about, think about it. If you have to manage a project and, you're also managing MSP, because typically I would say the most common configuration I see is that the service desk managers usually double as project managers in most MSPs, right? And so the reason that is because that's the only person that contains all of the contextual knowledge of your help desk. And that one person then has to determine what the path of all the projects are, right, from there. So what if that person's out, or that person's busy, or that person quits, or whatever it may be? You lost not only all of your institutional knowledge there that dictates how am I running my projects or my help desk, but it's something that's so impossible to automate because you have to have such a large contextual knowledge of everything spinning at once, right? It's just spinning plates on the end of sticks, and you got to keep the plates spinning all the time. Oh, and let's bring in 17 more project plates and make sure that those all spin at the same time, right? So I think that this is one of my favorite things about Moovila in general, is that they've automated the pieces of it that can be, but they've not removed your agency, because that's really, in automation in general, not just in projects, but in automation in general, there is what we call the convergence, right? Where you have automation and then you have agency, and as automation goes up, agency goes down. At 2 points, those things converge, and that's where you need to be at, right? So you want to add automation without taking agency away from people. It's impossible to do, but Moovila figured it out somehow. Personally, I've never done it. I've never been able to do it. So hats off to them on figuring it out on which pieces are actually automatable, right? And I'm sure Rob has a lot to say about this too, because I see him down there smirking.
I couldn't agree more, Chris. It's just this concept of don't go ahead and just automate everything, right? I mean, giving props where they're due. I mean, Chris does an incredible job with automation, both internal and with his clients. But Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but really you're looking for those repeatable tasks that potentially have either a low skill or a low value, and you're starting. That's where you're starting with any type of automation in project management. I mean, Louis, correct me if I'm wrong, right? It's project management is a repetitive task, right? You have a checklist of things that you want to get done, and you do it on project A, and you move on to project B, and next day you start back at the same set of projects. So
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier. That's people will be like, well, just when the dates are wrong, just update all of them. And it's like, well, no, like there's got to be, there's got to. We're going to make it easy to do it, right? It's human assisted automation. We'll automate. We know when they can logically happen, but you still need in projects. Still need someone to review, right? It could be that the customer has to be in the office in 2 weeks, and if you just update the dates, they're going to miss that, and then you're going to say, oh well, sorry, right? So it needs to be. There's got to be that let me review that plan. Does this make sense? No, it doesn't. Let me add some additional resources here to get this done instead of smoothing and extending my duration. So, and same thing then with the scheduling piece we're looking at, right? We still want someone to go in and say, oh, well, they've got this here. Could it be moved? Do I need to pull this forward? So giving you less clicks to get it done, right? And automating that process so you don't have to do the thinking. We're going to do that math for you because that's what it is. It's give me your structure. You give me your work days, you give me your holidays, you give me the hours you work in each day. Let us do the math, and then you check the math and say, yep, that makes sense. We'll update these dates, or no, I need to change this a little bit, right?
Yep, and you hit the key phrase there was human assisted or human augmented automation. That's what we call it, HAA, human augmented automation, because there are so many things that are repeatable processes that may be automatable, but you need to have so much context to be able to do those things that maybe they're not good candidates for automation or full automation, right? And there was a time in my career where I was like, nope, automate it all. Let's get rid of the people. Let's just automate everything. But you can't. I've come full circle or almost full circle on that now. And I'm at the point where it's so many things that we do in our industry are better to be human augmented than to be fully automated, because you had a good example there. Whether they need to be in the office in 2 weeks, or there's, somebody's getting married in a week and they're going to be out a day. Yeah, we may know it based on their schedule. Maybe that's automatable in some regards, but you're missing so much context that it has to be human automated, right? Maybe we're going to see that change in the near future, where language models are able to ingest enough context to maybe understand it, which Rob has seen what I'm working on there. I'm cooking, but it's never going to happen in the project space. It's too much of a human augmented necessity, right? So
Yeah, I think if our viewers listen to every episode we've literally mentioned on every episode, like there's something that should not be automated. There is such a thing as over automation. So, but
Elon Musk said the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he automated that response.
Right. No, but Louis, I really like the way you guys approached it here. Just like nudging people in the right direction, right? Okay, let's touch on the AI piece again, because you guys mentioned it a few times. What are you guys' thoughts on like currently and in the future, right? With AI, what role will AI play in the future of project management automation or in general? I know there's a few AI assisted things in the software already, so.
I mean, Chris, Rob, you guys both hit it, right? What's the repeatable process in project management? So I think some things that we are working on that I think are pretty straightforward is, what's your cadence on status updates or status reports internally or externally? How do you do those, right? So automating that, hey, this is my dashboard for this customer, automate that this gets sent to them every once in a while, trying to maybe take out some of those meetings, right? Like if you can give them enough context, here's what was completed in the last 2 weeks, what's happening in the next 2 weeks, then we save time on meetings. So I think that's a pretty straightforward one. The scheduling piece, right? We're giving you that, find me the next 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever hour time slot you want. But I think the next piece of that for us is going to be, okay, schedule the first 2 weeks of this project. what does it look like? Like just take the next 2 weeks on all the tasks and just schedule it, put it on the calendar, right? Still, here's all of those times and here's what it looks like and here's where they are, and make you review and approve that. But that's one. And then the other place we're going is automating financials, because it's an absolute nightmare. I mean,
Rob loves that. It's music to his
like,
ears.
I've talked to Rob about this. I've got like a spreadsheet on my desktop too. I won't make you guys look at it because it's pretty rudimentary, but it's like, wait, what, they do this way? Why would they do that way? So giving you the tools to automate the financials on your project. And there's a lot of different components to that, because it's automating and forecasting your fixed fee projects, your time material projects, how you bill them. Do you take deposits? Do you not take deposits? Do you recognize where do you recognize accruals, cash flow? Then you layer MRR and forecasting MRR on top of that as well too, based on projects. So it's a spot in the industry that needs to be easier for MSPs, and we are going to make it easier.
Yeah, for the number
You're
of
going to
ways.
make it easier, but they're not going to make it easier on themselves. I promise you. Take it from somebody who built a billing application for MSPs, and I will never do that again.
And before we have to go over financials on Tuesday with Rob.
Yeah, the number of ways that MSPs can mess up and screw up project management, they do the twice as number of ways in billing. So
I didn't say I want to bill or invoice. I didn't say that yet. But it's crazy. I continue to be shocked by the conversations, and I don't know why. And I keep going to
9
Rob,
out of 10 people, 9 out of 10 of you watching this right now, you bill like shit.
Tell us how you feel, Chris.
That's how I feel. That's how I feel, Rob.
Go to academy.pax8.com. Oh, sorry.
Tyler's just racking up those checks.
11 out of 10 of you are really struggling with billing and math.
You'd be surprised how much they pay me every time I say it. So, all right. Let's move on to communication. I know we touched on it a few times, and how Moovila makes it easier to give you that information right up front on how to, so you can communicate the schedule or issues on the project. But Rob, what is some effective communications that MSPs, strategies that MSPs can use, communicating internally with the project team and with the client?
Yeah, so definitely, and I think Louis even touched on it in his demo, getting those touch points and those project updates internal from your project resources, your technical resources, and then the project manager reaching out to the point of contact. And a slight deviation, I would say, when you're talking just about operational best practices, let's make sure that the communication has value, right? We talk about automation. There's nothing worse than having a script that's kicking out an automated ticket template to the client that says no update, right? Or this project ticket has moved from 20% to 25%. What does that truly mean to the client? Probably a whole pile of nothing. So when you're communicating, especially if you're leveraging some type of automation, make sure it has value.
Yeah, because the opposite end of that spectrum is, oh man, this meeting could have been an email, right? Like, how many of those do you sit in a week? Like 10? Because I don't know, I'm doing a big project right now on our MSP side, and like we're meeting twice a week, and I'm like, wow, this could really have been an email. This could absolutely have been an email. I don't need to sit here for 30 minutes and go through death by PowerPoint on why we've progressed 5%, right? So I think that's actually going to be probably a good place where automation is going to gain, like Louis said, like being able to generate realistic, actionable, or digestible summaries to your clients, to keep them abreast of progress. That's going to be huge. Reducing the amount of meetings, because that's the other thing, is the client's like, I'm paying you to run this project. Why do you have to meet with me 3 times a week? Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I think part of that too is the customer's expectations, right? And they're typically unrealistic, right? But hey, when you do that external kickoff on the project, what's your expectation of communication on this project? Do you expect weekly status meetings? Okay, that's a little unnecessary for a project like this. Let's try an email week one, meeting bi-weekly, see if that works, but just ask. This is in previous life in manufacturing, we had a customer that they didn't manufacture anything themselves. So I won't try not to go on my soapbox. It was all contract, and they would just fire off emails all day long, just all day long, to people at a manufacturing plant that are out on the floor. They're not sitting at computers, right? It took a while to get people to understand that's their communication expectation. They want emails back in 5-10 minutes. So I think it just makes it a lot easier on projects to go ahead and just ask that question up front. Maybe you know it from the customer if you've worked them before, but it's always a good, easy one to build it into your checklist on your external kickoff. What's your expectations for communications on this project? So that way, you know what they expect, you can talk through it, and then you don't have to sit through those meetings. Or if you sit through those meetings, you then can say, do you think this could have been an email? Right? It's a little bit easier, and that way you're not wasting everybody's time.
Spoiler alert, it could always be an email. Very rarely does it ever need to be a meeting. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of gain too in gaining ground, right? Is keeping people abreast of progress, summary reports. It's a very fine line of how do I keep people abreast of progress so they feel like they're getting value out of my project services, but then also at the same time not bombard them with useless information that they don't care about. There's a reason they hired your MSP to do this project. If they really wanted to be that involved in it and be elbow deep on it, they would have done it themselves, right? So, and that line is blurred and it's zigzagged and it's all over the place. So it's really hard to pin down.
All right. Scaling project management. So obviously, MSPs always start small, they grow, our challenges change as we grow and scale. And sometimes it can become challenging. Louis, can you, from a project management standpoint, can you share some insights on this, on as you grow, right, you're obviously doing larger, more complex projects with more people involved.
Templates. You gotta have templates. Just gotta have templates, and you gotta have more than 2 tickets, right? It's as long as you have some place to start from, and you can iterate on top of that as it gets larger and more complex, and you can piece those things together, it's just going to make your life a lot easier, because you can quickly, as it grows and you get more projects and more and people involved, you're just flying off the seat of your pants, and you're just building out work plans on the fly, and then before you know it, you're calling Moovila and you're saying, hey, we've got to clean this up. We have no idea what's going on. So templates would be my biggest recommendation. The right number of tickets in those templates. And Chris, you hit on it earlier. I went the other way, saying you can't have 2 tickets, and you said you can't have too many tickets. And there's definitely a fine line on that. There can be death by tickets. You've got to look at the balance of what's the burden of administration for techs to go in and update, 15-minute increments. It's just not right. It's not worth it. At that point, it's a milestone. It's a checkbox. So I would say templates for scale, and then just you've got a process. You've got to stick to it, right? And if it needs to be reviewed and changed because the scope of your business is different, the projects are, then that's fine, right? Just review it and set it, and you've got to follow a process, or else everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah. And I'll echo that. The templates are probably even if you're not using Moovila, templates are the most important thing you can do for your projecting, because what are projects? They boil down to a formula of steps to get from A to B, right? Sounds like a great idea for a template, because if you're not using a template-based process to do your projecting, or even a lot of your service delivery tickets can be templatized, you're sacrificing consistency potentially, right? If you're going to hand scope every project and you're going to hand create every single ticket under every single project, you're going to have mess ups. You're going to break consistency. And this is a thing that I see a lot. Maybe Rob, you speak to this too, but MSPs that do primarily projects tend to explode in growth in a very small amount of time, because there's not a lot of really competent MSPs that do that stuff. So you might start out as a project MSP and you've exploded in growth in 3 or 4 years. Well, guess what? You're still creating your projects by hand without templates. You're going to have a bad time as you scale your business, right? Eventually, you're going to hit that critical mass where you just can't scale anymore, and then you're going to be knocking on Rob's door begging for help. So,
No, I couldn't agree more, Chris. Like you said, deploy a project and do it well. Good news will spread, right? And I would say the only thing I would add to the conversation thus far would be continuous improvement, because it's going to be the key to your scalability, right? So there really needs to be, as part of that project closeout phase, there needs to be that internal review, right? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? Where are risks? Where are our assumptions? I would be disappointed to know that somebody had done a project and didn't grab some lessons learned and go back in and make updates, because you are, no matter what you think, you are going to do that project again in some way, shape, or form.
150%. And this is the mistake that every single MSP, TechPulse included, makes, is that they are not doing quality assurance, quality control, quality improvement on every single project, and on a good number of their tickets, right? Because it's extremely laborious to do. And maybe this is somewhere that generative AI is going to, gain us some traction in the future. But, the point being here is that
yeah.
The idea being that you need to leave every project with bullet points about what you didn't do great so you can improve it next time. Because if you don't, you're going to amplify the problems, because eventually you're going to do that project again. You're going to do it even at a bigger scale, and the problems are going to manifest even bigger there. And our industry is becoming commoditized very rapidly. So service delivery is the only thing you can do to set yourself apart from your competition. That's it, point blank, period. There's no more to it.
Yeah, I sound like my grandfather because I've said hell in a handbasket a minute ago, and now I'm going to say this one, but whatever. He was a good dude. Insanity's doing the same thing over and over again. It really is. I mean, if you don't review your projects at the end and everybody's stressed out and everything's on fire and you're late and you're missing profit and you don't do a review at the end, you're going to get the same result the next time. Yeah. And it's going to keep happening, right? So just in your templates, build a project review task at the end of that project or ticket, and you can't close it out until you get that step done.
And make sure it's built into the budget for the project administration.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The project manager, the project engineer, and maybe a third party that wasn't part of the project that has an outside perspective on it too.
Hey, if the client's not paying for that time, you are.
Exactly. And that's a really good point. Bringing somebody that was not involved in the project in to look at it from an objective point of view, because sometimes you're too close to a project to really extract those actionable insights from it.
Yep.
I am there all the time. I can't tell you how many times I message Connor or Robbie or Quentin, and I'm like, hey, can you look at this? Because I've been looking at it too. I'm too close to it. I can't accurately gauge if I'm doing this right or wrong, right?
Yep. All right, last question on this topic. Rob, what are some indications that an MSP's hit that point, right? That it needs to scale its project management practices. It needs to hire on new people. Like, what are those kind of indicators to watch out for?
So this starts kind of falling into that capacity planning. And the easiest way I've found it is, this is going to be one of those, it's more of an art than a science. Because if you're going to get somebody who's fresh out of school and, super proud they have their PMP, but no industry experience, they're not going to be able to manage projects at scale and at efficiency like somebody like a Louis, right? Who's got a couple gray hairs and some quite a few years.
I'm just losing it.
Quite a few, projects under his belt. So it really becomes the complexity of the projects combined with the quantity of the projects combined with the skill and efficiency of the project manager. And I'll go on record to say I don't think I've come up with a magic number that says, hey, this type of, like an L1 project manager can handle 20 projects of a class 2 complexity.
We should come up with that.
Okay.
You guys should absolutely do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we should come up with that. Yeah, and it's you're 100% right, Rob. There's a lot of art to it, and we've had conversations and pre-sales, and people are trying to say, well, we want to calculate our ROI on the tool and all this stuff, and I'll build these spreadsheets with all these variable inputs, and then I'll say, and they'll give me the number of hours that they're running, and then I'll say, well, how many project managers do you think you need right now? And they'll have 0, and they'll go, I feel like we probably need 3 PMs and 1 project coordinator. And I'll be like, at this point, it's probably too late. So I would say if you feel like you need more than 1, you need at least 1. You need somebody focused on it.
If you feel like you need more than 1, stop making spreadsheets and hire 1.
Yeah.
I think another takeaway is if you don't think you have a project manager, you do. They just don't have that title. So you have the service manager, or at worst, an L3 engineer with that billable rate acting as a project manager.
That's absolutely right. And probably 85% of MSPs in the world are using their service delivery manager or a high tier engineer to do project management. And it violates the cardinal rule of Pax8 Academy business coaching, and that's to use the cheapest resource available for a task that's appropriate. See, I do pick stuff up.
Love it.
Did you know he paid attention, Rob? That's crazy.
I'm shocked. He went back in his notes. I know it.
That's why I kind of cut out there for a minute. He was like, I got to go pull those notes.
Old of you all to assume that I have notes.
He's got ChatGPT writing the notes.
Yeah, AI does his notes. All right, cool guys. Any final thoughts from any of you and key takeaways?
I'll go off the last one you guys just said there. You think you don't have a project manager, you do. And this is how I got into project management. This is how most people do. Is there's not a lot of people that wake up as a kid and they're like, I want to be a project manager when I grow up. There are, and that's awesome. But most people is, hey, you're somewhat organized and you can communicate well. Can you kind of just do this thing? And that's honestly in the MSP industry and a lot of others, that's how we see it go. Is, hey, we just kind of, this person kind of project manager, we need one, and it just kind of evolves over time. And, just if you're in the situation where you think you're that individual, that is that project manager, then talk about it, right? Like, hey, should we be doing something differently? And if you're that leader and you think that I need to do it, start talking about it, because it is, and again, it doesn't matter the industry, it is really hard to do projects and expect those same people to do the day-to-day operations, no matter what it is. It is difficult. They are different. They need to be handled differently. Whatever tool you're using, whatever industry you're in, it is a different aspect of the business. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I would say if you're an MSP who's already doing projects and you have either sales initiatives or clients that are coming to you and saying, hey, I want more projects. If you don't have a tight process, if you don't have efficiencies, you need to get in front of it, and you need to start looking at third-party tools like a Moovila to be able to empower you to scale. Because you're going to get behind, you're going to get client dissatisfaction. It's going to be either you messed up on a project delivery, or you couldn't even take on the project because you didn't have either resources or time or skill set. And clients aren't going to accept that.
Yeah, I would like to build on that and say that this is one of the cardinal sins of being an MSP, right? Is you take on a project and you're like, oh, I can do this project, but you have no actual idea what your resource utilization or your capacity even is for that project. And you end up doing it bad. And when you do it bad, it's bad for your reputation. It's bad for your relationship with your client. And it would have probably been better to not do the project to begin with than to do it wrong or to do it poorly, right? And I think, again, one of the cardinal sins of our industry that we really preach against is don't throw tooling at a problem. This is the exception to that rule, maybe the exception that proves the rule. Project management is something you need to throw tooling at because our tooling as an industry doesn't do it well. Our PSAs, it doesn't matter what flavor of PSA you're using. They're all terrible at project management. None of them even like scrape the acceptable level of meeting those, jumping over those bars that you need to really deliver projects well, right? And you see the MSPs that aren't using tooling that are delivering projects well tend to have super highly focused project managers that are dedicated, that have really like lots of life experience doing those. I actually have one MSP partner that is a massive MSP, like over 100 agents, and probably 70 of those are in their professional services division. But guess who they hire to do the really, extensive technical stuff for them? Us. Because what they're really good at operationally is those competencies around project management. They're not super great at the technical aspect of it. And I seem to see that duality of they're either good at one or the other, right? And far more common is that they're really good at the technical stuff, but actually getting the operational stuff done is really tough. And it's usually because they're doing it all in spreadsheets. So if your projects are in spreadsheets, you're doing it wrong. This is the time you need to like evaluate tooling, right? Because you're not gonna scale that without tooling.
Cool deal. Yeah, I mean, one of the key takeaways for me is, and I think it's important in project management, is the communication, right, with the client especially. And I like what Louis said, is make sure those expectations are set beforehand, right, at the start of the project. Some clients don't care, right? They're like, hey, send me an email update every couple weeks, confirm we're still on, the timeline's still good, the due date, go live date still there, and that there's no, things blocking us from moving forward. And some clients want 4 meetings a week, and it's just way overkill. But different projects require different type of update cadences. So make sure you set those expectations up front. Cool deal. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. This was awesome. I know you all are busy, so we appreciate the time you're taking out to join us and give us your insights. And Louis, thanks for demoing Moovila. I think it's an awesome tool. Hopefully everybody watching found this valuable. You learned something today, and catch us on the next one. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and if you want to hang out with us and kind of continue the conversation, we'll drop our Discord link in there. We all hang out. All of us from TechPulse hang out and chat, share nuggets of information, or just joke around. So cool. All right, thanks everyone. See you on the next one.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.